These are in listen-only mode.
Live from world headquarters of One Life Fully Lived in booming Portola, California, welcome to our second webinar, Reduce Debt, Retire Comfortably with Byron McBroom, CPA, and One Life Fully Lived. We're the organization that helps you dream it, plan it, and live it. So what we want to do today, guys, is we have a wonderful webinar with you with Byron, who's an incredible speaker. But first, I want to let you know what our upcoming webinars are. We have Debbie Yost on creating and maintaining life balance using the Wheel of Life. That's on March 11th. And Dr. Fred Gross on cutting the mooring lines that hold us back. This one's on how do you cut through the clutter of your life and actually get things done. So we're going to get to Byron right now, but I just want to remind you, if you have any questions, be sure to just ask. There, you can type in your questions on the right-hand side of the control panel, and just ask us the questions, and Byron will be happy to answer them. So without further ado, here's Byron McBroom, CPA. Byron and I, you see him sitting here on a mountain. We do a lot of mountain climbing together. We do a lot of goal setting together. And what he's awesome about is helping you, no matter where you are with your finances, maximizing them. And that's what today's webinar is all about. So welcome, Byron McBroom.
Hey, well, thanks for having me. I'd first like to welcome everybody to the webinar. And I want to start off the webinar by telling you a little story. About 5 months ago, I was riding my mountain bike up at Bear Valley, and at the top of the hill, I stopped to eat my peanut butter sandwich, and I started having really bad heartburn. I mean, my stomach was tearing me up. Well, I found out I was having a heart attack, and so they med-flighted me down to the hospital. I got a stent put in, and I thought this first heart attack wasn't so bad. I mean, I walked a mile while I was in intensive care. And I walked 2 miles a day. I get out of the hospital, and I thought, this just is not so bad. But when we picked up my drugs from Kaiser, and they actually forgot to give me my Plavix. For those of you that might be a little younger or don't know anything about heart attacks, when you put a stent in somebody, it's like a little piece of, it's like the spring on a pin, so you have a piece of metal in your heart, not in your heart, but in your arteries, and you have to take blood thinners for a year. Well, I didn't get any blood thinners from the hospital.
Hello.
And basically, if you don't take your blood thinners after you have a heart attack, you're going to die. Well, that's exactly what happened to me. On Saturday morning, I got up to have a drink of water, and I dropped down dead. My heart stopped. I actually went code blue. Fortunately for me, my son happened to be spending the night, and when he heard my wife's hysterical screaming, he came in and immediately started CPR and actually saved my life. So the point of this story in a financial seminar is that today I'm going to be giving you a prescription to be able to help you live a debt-free, prosperous life. And you can choose to take some or all of your medicine. Occasionally in my talk, you're going to hear me say, here's your Plavix. And what I mean by that is that this item is critically important, and I repeat, it cannot be ignored. If you don't do this part of the plan, your plan will die without it. So to get you going and retire comfortably, I want to start off by telling you the 4 laws of debt-free prosperity. Now, the first law is called tracking. And in tracking, what I mean by tracking is you have to set up a system.
He was seeing the levels to it. He's running
Tim, you can't hear this in the webinar, but there's a lot of background noise, Tim, that I can't hear. You want to start up a system for tracking your expenses. And what I mean by that is you want to set up a system with, Brian, can you go back a slide? We want to set up a system which tracks every dime that you're spending. And you can do this several ways. You can do this with, you can buy Quicken. There's software online you can use with Mint.com, Microsoft Money. They have those old dome books that you see in the office supply store. You can use a blank notebook. You can get an app on your phone. anything where you can track where every dime you're spending. I mean, if you spend 89 cents or $1.08 at McDonald's to buy a soda pop, write it down. There's an expression that says what you can measure, you can manage. And the problem with most people is they just spend their money and they don't really know where it goes. By tracking your money and finding out exactly what you have and where you're spending it, you can actually know where to save and cut back on. Now, the second law of debt-free prosperity is represented by this little target here with the darts in it, and what that means is that you have to start setting goals. Now, saving up money and investing is a lot like dieting. Has anybody ever out there, I'm sure you have, gone on a diet and you start by counting the calories? Just by counting the calories, you tend to eat less because you're writing it down. You're going to find that back in the tracking, just like dieting, if you start writing down where you spend your money, you'll find out that you actually spend less money. And with targeting, you need to set goals. And there's not enough time in this seminar to go out about all the proper goal setting techniques, but just know that a goal setting has to be something that's measurable, quantifiable, and has to have a date on it that you succeed by it, so that anyone, either you, your spouse, or anybody else, can see that if you've met that goal or not met that goal. It has to be measurable, quantifiable, with a date on it. The third law of debt-free prosperity is called trimming. It's this person tightening the belt here. And by tightening the belt, we went back to, if we consider tracking, we know where we're spending the money. By belt tightening, we know where we can cut back on. You know, one of the problems with living in the United States is everybody's super attached to, you know, the cars they drive, how many empty bedrooms they have in their house, and there's really, happiness in life is not really, they've done studies where happiness in life is not at all tied to how much money you make once you're over the poverty line. So most of the things that we want to spend, I always say we spend money impressing people we don't like. You know, so you want to basically learn how to cut and trim on the expenses. Now, the fourth law, and I'll move on to talk more about them, is training. That's represented by this pile of books. During the period of while you're eliminating your debt and saving some money to invest in, you need to start training yourself so you'll be ready to invest when the time comes. So with that, I want to go to the next slide, and I want to talk about what it takes to become a millionaire. And as you can tell by looking at this slide, it takes, I set it up to save 1 million, 2 million, or 3 million, and basically wanted to show you that if you start at a younger age, it takes a lot less money per month to save up money than if you start at an older age. For instance, in this little schedule that I have, if a person starts at age 15, it only takes $7 a month to save $1 million if you earn 15% on your money. Now, if you wait till you're 55 to get the same $1 million, you have to save $3,500 a month. So as you can see, it's a lot easier to start at age 15 and do $7 a month, or even at age 30 and do $70 a month, and then it is to wait till you're 55 and you have to come up with $3,500 a month. Let's go to the next slide. Now, one of the things that you always want to figure out, everybody always asks me, is how much is enough to retire? And it's a little bit different for everybody because everybody's needs are a little bit different. But what you want to figure out is, and this is from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, is when your passive income exceeds your expenses, you have enough. Now, what does that mean? Passive income is money that you don't have to go to work for. And what I mean, I always call it either mailbox money is a good name for it. It's money that comes in the mail and you don't have to go to work every day. Now, something like that might be interest at a bank, rents from a rental property. Hopefully, the property is paid for and you have a positive cash flow. Another couple times on another couple items you might want to consider with that, Social Security and retirement. Now, there's several other sources of passive income, but these are ones that are pretty simple and easy to understand. So next slide. One of the main principles in saving up enough money is that you have to learn what's called pay yourself first. The book I'd recommend on this is called The Wealthy Barber. And what I mean by that is when most people do a budget and say, I'm going to save X amount of dollars, what they first do is they go through and say, okay, I have $2,000 a month coming in. I got rent of this. I got utilities of this. I got my car payment. I got car insurance. I got grocery bills. They come to the bottom of the schedule and they figure out they have $500 a month they can save. And what they tend to do is they tend to spend their money in the same order as they wrote it down on the list. They pay their rent, they pay the utilities, they pay their grocery bill, they buy some clothes, they pay their car payments, and what happens is they get to the end of the month, they got no money left. They got more month than money. What you have to do, and this is a Plavix moment, take your Plavix, is that you have to learn to put the savings away first. Pay yourself first. If you don't do this, you're going to get to the end of the month and you're going to have no money. If you put your money in the bank and you can't pay one of your other bills this month, you'll always catch up on that bill paying, but you'll never catch up on your savings. Next slide. Everybody always says, well, I'll be able to make up that check next month, and the problem is you're never going to make a month. That money's gone forever. You're never going to make it up, and the income that's going to make for the rest of your retirement and life is gone too. So this is a Plavix moment. If you don't take this, if you don't do this one, your plan will die. And so make sure that you pay yourself first. This is a critical item. Next slide. I'm having a technical difficulty. Here we go. One of the things that we have to talk about too is a lot of people, before they can start saving, they have some debt that we want to get out of. One of the first steps you have to do in your goal setting is to get out of debt, because living a life with debt, when you're paying interest and it's 13, 14, 15%, you're never going to be able to get out of debt. So what I've done here, this is called my debt eliminator schedule. And we're going to go a little bit more into this, but as you can see, it's called the snowball method. And with this method, you're going to basically schedule all of your debts on the top of the page. See where I have dentist, first car payment, second car payment, your home equity loan, and then your credit cards. And you're going to list those debts from smallest to largest. And the reason you do that is you're basically going to pay the minimum payment on all these debts, and then you're going to concentrate on one debt at a time. So in my example here, your dentist payment is $130, your car payment's $190, $310 for the other one, and minimum payments on the credit cards. And what you're going to do is you're going to pay the dentist payment extra payments first until you get that one paid off, which in this example took 4 months. And then what you do, if you look in the column under Auto 1, you'll notice that the payment for the Auto 1 goes up from $190 to, in October, it goes to $320. What we did is we added the payment from the dentist to the car payment and are basically doubling up on the car payment. So we keep paying that off, so that gets paid for. Then we take that $320 a month that we're paying on that and apply it to the second automobile payment. So the second automobile payment jumps from $310 to $630. As you can see, the reason they call it snowball is the amounts you're paying gets larger and larger and larger. Without having a snowball method, what people tend to do is once they start paying off the dentist, they just go out more often, or they buy better clothes, and they just don't ever make any progress on their debt. By doing the snowball method, what it does, it makes it so that you have you start putting more and more, you don't have bracket creep by having your home expenses go up. You basically figure out a way to keep applying all that money to pay off all your bills, and you basically get everything paid for. Now, once you have everything paid for at the end of the 5 years or 3 years or whatever your plan works up to be, what you then want to do is, in this plan, you'd have, if you go to the bottom of the screen, you'd have about $1,100, $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 or $1,600 that you could pay a month. You want the total of this money to go straight to your savings. Don't just go on a spending spree after you're out of debt and have a nicer fun every day, take that money and start funding your retirement plan. By this way, you won't have any debt, and then you'll start putting quite a bit of money in your monthly savings plan for retirement. Next screen. What I've done is everything that I've just described on going out and paying off the debts for the snowball, I've basically detailed out here step by step. And I think you'll be able to download this presentation on the PowerPoint. And so I wanted you to all have something that you can do to take home and have something you can actually work up the schedule. I believe on the website too we will have blank get out of debt debt eliminator worksheets that you can take and fill out yourself. So can we go to the next slide? Next slide, Brian. One of the things you have to do if you get to your schedule and you track everything up and you don't have any room to make anything other than the minimums, you have to do what we call dynamiting the logjam. And I've made some examples here of what you have to do to somehow have more money available to pay down on your debt. Something like be moving to a smaller house, getting a roommate, selling a car and buying one that's paid for. You don't have to drive a brand new car with a payment. Get a second job. My favorite is to kick your children out of the house. I was so happy. I made my last college tuition payment for my daughter Melanie, and I made that last March. And I had 3 kids in school at once, and when they all got out of school, I had almost $3,000 to $4,000, almost $5,000 a month extra spending money. It sure made life a lot easier when the kids all got out of the house. So that's your best dynamite the log jam. And I'd like to introduce someone. The next person that's going to speak for just a couple minutes is someone that is Jessica, and she went to our first seminar, and she actually listened and took this stuff seriously. So I'd like to have her give you a little small speech on how it went. Jessica?
Thanks, Byron. My name is Jessica Saralegi, and I met Byron at the first One Life Fully Lived conference back in 2011. At that time, we were those people, just like most of America, who are absolutely buried in our own debt. We felt trapped. We didn't know how to get out, and we were really struggling. So I went to the first conference, and I met Byron, and he shared with me his personal copy of Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover that speaks about exactly what Byron's been teaching you today, the debt snowball and tracking and trimming and learning more and educating yourself about money. And that's exactly what my husband and I did. We dynamited the log jam by short selling our house, which was absolutely burying us. We've been renting for the last 2 years. And we set up a debt snowball with a 5-year goal in mind. And I'm here to tell you that by using his principles, that my 5-year goal turned into a 2-year goal, and that as of January 1st, 2014, my husband and I are proud to say that we are officially debt-free. And I cannot tell you how amazing that feels. We had built ourselves a nice big deep hole. We figured out how to stop digging, and we are absolutely thrilled to be able to share our story with you. It's a wonderful feeling to never, ever, ever have to be a slave to our debt ever again. And I would just want to tell you, Byron, I appreciate you so much, and thank you to One Life Fully Lived for giving us hope and the tools that we needed to get our debts eliminated, and we have an amazing financial future in front of us. So thank you for your time.
It's always really nice when you get feedback like that. It makes it all worthwhile. Thanks, Jessica. Next slide. I want to I have a couple examples of how if you don't do something on your plan, what it can cost you. Okay, this is me. I took my family on my 25th anniversary. My kids said, "Dad, we're going to buy you a trip to Hawaii." So they paid for our plane flight, and we paid for the rest of it. Okay, ended up our trip that the kids bought for Hawaii turned out to be an $8,100 trip. I tell you, when you take your kids to Hawaii and you're buying 5 $15 Mai Tais plus the tip, it adds up pretty quick. But an $8,100 trip, if someone spent that at age 25, that would cost you $381 a month for the rest of your life after age 65. And that's if you're making 6% interest on your money. If you did that at 24, if you were charged it on a credit card and didn't pay the credit card off, that would add up to $457,579. So that tells you the cost of what a credit card can be. Next slide. And I wanted to break that down to if we did just $100. So $100 charged on a credit card. $100 if you spend it at age 25 and invest it is $5 a month after you're 65, which is a total of $1,500. Charged on a credit card, that same $100 is costing you $6,133 if you left it at 24% your whole career. And I just wanted to show you how crippling this is a perfect example on showing you how debt is just crippling. Where do I see the questions?
Hey, B, we have some questions from earlier. Not sure if you want to address them now.
Yeah, let's get them right now.
Sure. So Bert Skirtum says he apologizes for jumping ahead, but he has a credit card debt, and should he keep saving 10% after he has an emergency fund, or should he put that 10% toward debt elimination? And that question is from Bert.
You know, if you read the books, Total Money Makeover, he talks about getting the emergency fund, but I personally would pay the credit card off, and if you had an emergency, you might have to use that credit card, but it'd have to be a true emergency. I like paying off the credit card. Why? You're going to make 1% on your emergency fund. Why not save the 29%? You know, if you're in the 29% or 18% or whatever, I would personally pay off the credit card first.
Does that answer your question, Bert? In the meantime, we had another question from the Andy Road group. Why do you start with the lowest debt amount rather than the highest interest rate?
Okay. The reason you start with the lowest debt amount is this is a real emotional item. And what some people tend to get started and they start making their payments and then they just lose track and the whole plan goes to hell in a handbasket. By starting with the lowest debt amount, you're going to have some emotional success and you're going to get rid of a bill. And then you can take that method and start snowballing it and get a bigger and a bigger and a bigger. And I think you're going to, unless you're extremely self-disciplined, the snowball method gives you that emotional support that you need and you feel like you're having success. And that's what I would do. And I think it's important to have that emotional success and then you keep going.
Great.
But if a person's extremely disciplined, then they can start with the highest interest rate debt and get out of debt, but they tend to lose track of it.
That's it for now, Byron.
Okay. So let's go to the next slide then. Now, one of the things you want to do is set yourself up to pay yourself first. That's the Plavix moment. And what you have to also do is exercise a little self-control on this thing, because it's really easy to have a case of the I wants and want to go out and buy something and say, oh, I'll make it up later. And what I want you to do is know where you're weak. I want you to take some action that will stop you from saving up a little money and then squandering it. And what you can do by that, what I mean by that, here's some examples, is when you set up your savings account, there's someone you know that will hold you accountable and won't let you cave into your whims and desires, and put them on the account too, where you have to get their signature to take money out of the account. Then you know that it's going to be done properly. One of the things you can do if you want to help in paying yourself first is have your employer take it out and make a direct deposit to your bank account. That way you never even see the money. Because what happens when people get a raise, they tend to just spend a little bit more and the money just vaporizes. Every time you get a raise on your paycheck, you should also have that extra money go into your savings automatically. If your employer has a 401k retirement plan, by all means take advantage of that, especially the matching part. That's critical. I like to have people put money into an IRA account, and that way they can get a tax deduction for it too. And that way you pay a little less taxes, and it helps supplement your savings. So you just want to make yourself to where you're, make it so you can't be impulsive. One of the things I like to do, if you are an impulsive person, set this rule up. If you really want to buy something, write it down, stick it on a magnet on your refrigerator. If you still want it in 30 days, then maybe you can think about getting it at that point in time. But that's a really good one to help you maintain a little bit of self-control. Okay, let's go to the next slide. The next 3 slides, basically what I wanted to show you is that you can't, a lot of people are good at saving up money, and then they just don't know what to do with it. And you can't just have your money sit in the bank and do nothing. And I'm going to show you why that, right now in a bank at a CD you're getting 1% interest, which is not going to do anything. So in my next 3 slides, I want to show you 3 different things. And in my example, I'm going to use someone that's, say, let's use the age 30 person for all 3 examples. But in this one, this is for a person that makes $4,400 a month, take home, and if they save 10% of their earnings and invest it and get 6%, if they start at age 30, by age 65, they're going to have $633,000 in their account, and they're going to have monthly income, including $1,700 a month Social Security, of $4,691 a month. I hope everyone can see that. Now keep those 2 items in mind, $633 and $4,691. And Brian, let's go to the next slide. That same person, if they just stick their money in the bank and get 2%, they're only going to have $289,000 and $2,100 a month, and that's a big difference. That's a $2,500 a month difference by just getting, if you only stick it in the bank. Now, if you'll take the time and do the 4th principle, which is train, and learn how to invest money and get 10%, let's go to the next slide. In the next slide, that same person would have $1.5 million by getting 10%, and they would have $13,000 a month, which is $9,000 more a month than if you get 6%. So you can see learning how to invest your money and getting 7, 8, 9, 10, 12% is critical. And that money is out there if you take the time to educate yourself. But if you just stick it in the bank, you're not going to get it. And people are always asking, man, what do I buy for investments to get that kind of stuff, kind of rate of return, because it is critical to get a higher rate of return.
So one question is it possible to get a 10% return? And if so, can you tell us where?
Okay. Examples of a 10% rate of return might be if you do a deed of trust on someone. Let's say someone needs a loan on their house and they're self-employed. They pay their bills and they want to borrow some money on their house and it has a lot of equity. You're allowed to charge up 10% on a deed of trust on a home. That's a 10% savings. There's a book I'm going to highly recommend. It's called Rule 1 Investing, and it's all about how to buy stocks in the stock market. And what you do in the stock with the Rule 1 Investing is you will take and they teach you how to value a stock. So you take a company's financial statements. They have calculators on the guy's website, which is philtown.com, and you plug in the income from the company, and it tells you what the value of the stock is. And by following I'm not going to go over all those methods in the seminar because we don't have time, but I've been doing that same method for 2 years in a row, and I've gotten 25% per year on my rate of return with the stock market. And that was before the last run-up, which, by the way, I missed because I wait to buy stocks when they drop to 35% off of the value. I was going to buy a stock at 27. It only got down to 30. Well, the same stock went up to 55. So
can you repeat that website address, please, Byron?
It's philtown.com. The book is Rule 1 Investing. And I was always almost embarrassed of my stock buying because the way most people buy stocks and the way I did was someone would tell you what stock to buy. They were bragging about how well they did, so I'd go out and buy the stock. But they always told me about the stock after they made their money, and the stock had already gone up. Well, then, of course, as soon as I bought the stock would tank. And I'm sure a lot of you have that same experience. So with the Rule 1 investing, you learn, it gives you the trigger points on when to buy the stock, and it gives you trigger points on when to sell the stock. And what you want to do with that is you set up an account, a practice account at updown.com. And with that updown.com, you start with $1 million of play money. And what I want you to do is read and understand the book and then follow that system and practice for a full year before you buy a single stock. That way, while you're getting out of debt, while you're saving up your savings to buy stocks, practice on that updown.com, and you'll find out what mistakes you're going to make. I made some mistakes when I started, but I made them with play money instead of making them with real money. But that Rule 1 Investing is just a phenomenal book, and I don't think it's that hard. I mean, I'm a CPA, so maybe I understand it a little bit better than the average bear, but they have calculators on his website where you just plug in the numbers that you get off of Yahoo Finance, and it's pretty easy to get them. And he has a free seminar you can take which teaches you how to do it too. What I want to also talk about, Brian, if you can go to the next slide.
Since we're in a transition, we had one question from Margaret, and she asked, what is your opinion of the safety, quote, safety, of a bank safety deposit box?
The safety? Well, safety deposit box, you're not earning any money on anything you put in there. I think safety deposit box are really more for if you have gold, which doesn't earn you any money, and if you have important papers that you want to have protected. That's what I would use a safety deposit box. As far as being safe, they're probably safe. I mean, safer than your home, I would say. I had one client who had a whole bunch of gold and silver at his home, and somebody broke in and stole it all. So
she probably meant a CD.
Oh, a CD is safe because it's guaranteed, but you're not going to get enough. Unless you can get 7 or 8 or 9%, it's not going to give you the rates of return you're going to need to retire. For those of you that are starting at a later date, I prepared a little schedule here on what it takes at age 50 if you're just starting at age 50. And this is for someone to keep their income the same as it was pre-retirement. And someone would have to put away, if they put away 10% of their income, they would have to get a rate of return of 12.5%. If they put away 25% of their income, they would have to only get 7.3% on their money. So I think you can use kind of a mixture of this to figure out if you are 50 on what it would take at age 50 to have a retirement at age 65. Another thing you might do in your own personal tracking is work till you're 70. I personally think work keeps you healthy and alive. And so I don't plan on retiring until my mid-70s no matter what my financial situation is. But this is a good tool for someone that's in their mid-50s and they're just starting. Now this, you'd also want to try to have your house paid for by the time you retire at age 65 too. So next slide. So we talked about what investments to buy a little bit. I briefly touched on the stock market. And I don't know if later they're going to have someone speak actually on the stock market and how to buy those stock markets in a different webinar. That would be a good one for us to have. But rental real estate, I know a lot of my clients that have a lot of wealth, most of them got it through real estate. My wealthiest people all have real estate. So if you're doing the stock market, that's fine. But rental real estate, I mean, I would set as a goal maybe to have 10 properties free and clear by the time you're retired, because then you're going to have a nice nest egg for your retirement. CDs we talked about. The problem with CDs is they're only earning 1% if you're lucky right now. So CDs they're okay for holding your emergency fund, but they're not the best for long-term retirement. Bonds are the same as CDs, although I talked to one of my union clients and they were able to buy some bonds and are getting 15% on those bonds. So there's pretty high yield bonds out there too if you know what you're doing. And I mentioned deeds of trust. Somebody needs a home loan on their home. As long as the people pay, it's a great investment. As long as the market doesn't collapse and they walk away from it, then it's a terrible investment. So always buy your investments with a margin of safety. And like I said, Tim's an expert on rental real estate. I'm sure they're going to have another webinar on how to buy that, and we don't really have time for that right now. So But on the stock market, by that Rule 1 investing, that's a great one. Next slide. You know, we talked about saving up for retirement. You're really also going to want to have several other funds. Somebody had a question earlier on an emergency fund. The purpose of these other funds is so you don't have to raid your retirement account every time you have a small crisis. So some extra funds might be an emergency fund. Your emergency fund basically is 4 to 6 months of your spending money that it takes for you to live. So that way, if you have a temporary layoff or something like that, all of a sudden your retirement account doesn't get wiped down to zero just because you have a short-term emergency crisis. Or it might be, your transmission goes out. My daughter's transmission went out on her car, and of course that dips into my emergency fund. $4,500 out of my account because my daughter's transmission went bad. But you want to have those money set aside so you don't hit your retirement account. I like to set up vacation funds, so that way when you want to take that trip to Hawaii, you're not hitting out of your retirement plan. And then if you're going to buy a new car, let's start putting a car payment in the bank into a separate fund, and that way when you get to buy the car, you can have it paid for free and clear. Then again, you're not setting up a car payment with interest on it. And there's college funds, there's major repair new furniture fund. Anything that if you're going to remodel your home, start putting some money away for that. And it just makes it so that you don't hit that retirement fund.
Debbie asks what you think about REITs, R-E-I-T-S.
I won't confess that I'm an expert on REITs. I would take a look at, I think they're pretty safe because they're based on real estate, and I think they have a fairly high rate of return. I would say their rates of return would probably follow the real estate market. So if real estate's in an upswing, they probably are fairly good and get a reasonable rate of return. So I would think they'd be okay. I'm not going to profess to be an expert in them, though, so I won't. Next slide. One of the things you need to be prepared for in your plan is hiccups. They're going to happen. I look back at my heart attack that I had, and I survived. I actually had a sonogram in my heart, and I've actually had a full 100% recovery in my heart. So I'm back to as normal as Byron McBroom can be normal. But you're going to have hiccups in life. I look back at my situation, and my son was there doing CPR on him immediately, and thank God. But what if I would have barely survived and I would have been brain dead? And my wife would have lost her stream of income. And she'd have been stuck with me, or hopefully stuck with me. So she would have lost her income and have more expenses. So I would really take a hard look at having some disability insurance. It's actually more important than life insurance. And there's calculators. I actually have calculators on my website which can calculate how much life insurance you need, but you really need to take a hard look at disability insurance too, because you're 5 times more likely to become disabled than to die. Now I think we had a question on a car.
Yeah, one question. What if you can get a really low interest rate on a car loan, such as 9%, and leave the money in an investment getting a better rate?
I'm assuming you meant 0.9%, not 9%.
0.9, correct.
Yeah, I would probably finance the car and invest the money. The next car I buy, like my truck, I got 0% financing, and I just can't pass that up. So I would have probably a car payment and do that, and then invest the money. But if you're just going to stick it in a CD, then I'd probably pay off the car. I hope that answers the question. Did we get that?
Yeah, I'll let you know if it did.
Okay.
Thanks.
A real super good friend of mine got laid off his job, and he was making almost 100 grand a year, and basically when he went back, he was a little older and took a major cut in pay, and that was devastating for him. And and he was out of work for quite a while. And you want to be prepared for long or short-term unemployment. I always say divorce just makes 2 people poor. Your expenses double and your income gets less too. So, and then you're going to have major medical expenses. I have an invoice from my first heart attack, and it cost $20,000 for the helicopter ride, and then it cost $145,000 at the hospital, and I haven't gotten part of the bill yet. I haven't got the bill for the second heart attack. So so you want to be prepared for some major medical too. Okay, next slide. One of the things I want to talk about too is the price of bad credit, and I've done a quick example here. Someone with perfect credit, and this is obviously an old example because it's 6.9. You could trade that to 0.9, and you'd have a car payment. And then you say someone with really bad credit might go to the whorehouse lot and pay 15% interest, and that bad credit costs you $4,700. So what I like to do for everybody is put all your payments on auto pay at the bank, and even on your credit cards, put the minimum amount that you're going to pay. Like I always put $200 a month to be paid towards my credit card, whether I charge on it or not. That way I've never been late on in 10 years, I have never had a late pay on my credit. So next slide. And I'm going to move a little faster because I guess I'm getting short of time. Next slide. A little technical difficulty. Brian, can you move on the next slide?
Yeah, did you go over next steps? Next steps, Byron?
Okay, let's go over that. Anyway, what I wanted to do with this is give you an action plan. So the number one thing you have to do, let's go back to it, is set up a tracking system on setting up measuring, monitoring, find out where every dime you're spending. And there's lots of things out there. You can go to budgeting on YouTube. You can go to, there's just lots of them. Even write it down on a piece of paper. But find out where every dime is spending. Let's set some targets on what you need for retirement and plot that out. And, you know, in that, put your Social Security, put what your, if you have any pensions coming in, and find out what you need. And then once you know those two numbers, you can figure out what exactly it's going to take that you have to cut back on. And then by looking at, if you know exactly where your money's going, you know where to trim it. And while you're figuring all this out, start educating yourself. If you're going to invest in real estate, start going looking at homes for, just looking at homes, stopping at all the open houses, find out what things rent for. Just be real inquisitive and find it out. If you're going to invest in the stock market, buy the book that I mentioned and open an account at updown.com and start practicing on that. But start on it right now and get going. It's really critical to do what that is. Remember, the Plavix moment is start paying yourself first. If you have any debt, we have to get that debt cleaned up and work up a plan to be permanently debt-free. And then one of the habits that I like to do is start a program of continuous reading. I usually I do a program a month, either in health or in reading. And if you go to the next slide, I've put a list of books here that are recommended. And The Richest Man in Babylon is one of my favorite. It's just a little 2-hour read. A book that I really like, and I found this at a used bookstore, is The 4 Laws of Debt-Free Prosperity. That's where I got a lot of this seminar content. Think and Grow Rich is a phenomenal one. It's going to tell you more. It's more about self-brainwashing and how to convince yourself that you have to do this. Stop Acting Rich is a great book. It basically says that real rich people don't have all the Rolex watches and Porsches. The average best car for a millionaire is a Toyota Camry, and they use Timex watches. They don't have the expensive stuff. If you have a debt problem, Total Money Makeover is phenomenal on investing, Phil Town investing. And I try to get all my books in the library. Why pay for them? Use your money. Next slide. I also have some suggested websites to take a peek at. Mint.com is a great one for tracking where your targets, and it'll tell you where you're on target and how far you're off a budget. Updown.com, we talked about tracking. Expenser and Kiplinger, these are just two websites with a lot of information on financial strategies. There's lots of stuff on YouTube. Just make it a habit of doing something every month on teaching yourself a little bit more. And I want to finish the seminar with a little bit of a story about this donkey. This farmer had a well, and this donkey fell into it. And And the donkey, man, it was just scared. It was panicking. It was stuck in a well. It didn't know what it was going to do. And so a bunch of people were gathered around the well, and one of the guys all of a sudden took his shovel, scooped up a pile of dirt, and threw it on top of the donkey. Well, the donkey's in a panic. It's thinking it's going to be buried alive, and it starts wiggling around, and the guy keeps shoveling dirt on the donkey, and pretty soon the donkey gets really calm. When it gets dirt on it, it shakes off, takes a big step up, and shakes itself off. The guy keeps throwing more dirt and more dirt and more dirt, and pretty soon the donkey keeps shaking it off and stepping it up. And pretty soon they fill the well up with dirt, and the donkey just walks away. Well, life is like this donkey. You're going to have, people. You're going to have shovels of dirt thrown on you every once in a while. You're going to fall in a well, and what you got to do is shake it off, step up, and get on with life. And with that, I'll open it up if anybody has any questions.
That was great, Byron. Another question is, do you think someone in their 50s can count on Social Security?
I went to a Social Security seminar about 1.5 years ago, and I'm 56. And this guy was a guy from Social Security, and he told me that I was okay. And he said the people behind us, there's Social Security basically is 68% funded. So at some point in time down the road, people are only going to get 68% of the money going out for Social Security. Now, how they're going to do that? Is it going to make it income? Can't imagine that they wouldn't start discriminating against people who already have money. So as of right now, the answer is yes. But there's only two workers going to be for one retiree, and they're either that or they're going to super raise the retirement age so you only collect it after you're 70. So I think it's okay for now, but that's probably going to change. For someone in their 30s, I would count on getting 0, especially if they have any money.
That's been great, Byron. Thank you so much. And we're going to bring Tim Rode back on to close up the webinar.
All right, everybody. Well, I'm sure you got some really valuable information here today. We want to really thank you for attending. Please share this with people in your life that need to hear this financial message. We really want to thank Byron McBroom, CPA, and Jessica Saralegi. You did phenomenal. I know your story resonated with so many people out there, and if it didn't with them, I'm sure it did with somebody they know. So looking ahead here, on March 11th, we have Debbie Yost. How many of us are living a full, balanced life? That's what Debbie's going to share with us. How do you create and maintain balance in your life? And then on April 8th, one of my mentors, Dr. Fred Gross. This guy's incredible, you guys. So both of these are just can't-miss webinars. Please put them on your calendar. Not shown on here, I also want you to mark the dates, June 28th and 29th for our mid-year reflection, and that's just a tease. So we also want you to become an active member of our social communities, especially that One Life community group. If you're not a member already, please join it, and please post there, okay? So we've got big things coming in 2014 we're very excited about. Nice to know we will be sending this recording out tonight, as well as a PDF with all the docs on it. And we'd like you to share this with your friends. And hopefully, if you weren't with a mastermind group this time, please get a hold of me on how you can start and be a part of your own One Life Fully Lived mastermind group. So this is Tim Rode tuning out from One Life Fully Lived World Headquarters in booming Portola, California. Thanks again for tuning in.